Man is wishing, ardently wishing at that, for immortality. So man is trying to reach that stage of immortality, even with the physical body. That's what he's trying for. But actually, the spirit only lives on, the body is fallen. The first sentence of the new chapter is addressed to man, and she poses a question. Is it enough for a man to know that he exists? HPB is asking. It's a question. Is it enough for a man to know that he exists? Just that he is living, is it good enough to be a reason to call him a man? Is it enough for a man to know that he exists? Can I consider, if he is existing and not living fully, can I say that man is living? That's what she's saying. Is it enough? If he looks like a man, does it justify the title of man which is attached to him? If he looks like a man, for all practical purposes, he looks like a man but behaves like an animal, does it justify the title that he is called a man? She says, in order to qualify to be called a man, at best a spiritual man, she says certain things are required to be done by man. In order to qualify to be called as man, at best the spiritual man, he must transform himself. He must transform himself. What is the transformation which anyone has to go through? She is saying now, continuing, eliminate the weed of selfishness which dominates his personality, his conscience. Because the personality is full of selfishness, it has got its collective means. And if he thinks that it is enough to look like a man is not enough, he has to change himself completely, transform himself completely, and eliminate the weed of selfishness. Selfishness is like a weed, a useless weed which comes about with the crops. So remove that weed of selfishness which dominates the personality. Personality is something which will fall away. So that personality is completely overtaken by selfishness. So she says you have to eliminate that. And he has to work on other weaknesses also. If there are other weaknesses which he can find himself by going into his own method of introspection, he has to work on other weaknesses also, is what she is saying. And she says, man should also remove prejudice and superstition. Man should remove prejudice and superstition. What is prejudice? Predetermined idea about anything. He is already guided by somebody or guided by his own study or understanding. So he is prejudiced. He is not open-minded. So that also he should remove. And superstition. Superstition is something which is being carried over for the period of time, maybe by his elders, maybe by some other teachers who has given him spiritual teachers. So this superstition and prejudice also he should remove. HPB says, man is affected and influenced by prejudice. He continues to live in prejudice. Why? For the sake of fear of public opinion, she says. If he changes his view, somebody has been influential for him to prejudge and decide a particular way of looking at things. And if he comes out of it, he drops prejudice. He is scared of his public opinion, what others will think of him. So he continues to be prejudiced. Man is simply following others and not acting on his own, based on his own inputs and judgment. So the first beginning of the chapter itself, she is giving a lesson to man as to how he should conduct himself. So it is not enough if I look like a man, I should behave like a man, that is one. Then he has to transform himself if he really has to justify the title of man which is attached to him, transform such a way that he can eliminate the weed of selfishness. So the personality is dominated by the selfishness, so he has to remove that. And he has to work on other weaknesses also which are there. So he has to work on other weaknesses to remove them and make himself pure. And also remove prejudice and superstition. This is also what she prescribed. A man should be free of prejudice and superstition. Man is affected and influenced by prejudice. He continues to live in prejudice for the fear of public opinion. So we don't say, I don't mind what others keep saying. I would remain with whatever I think is right, is not something which people do. People care for what other people are thinking about us. So we carry on with our prejudices, is what she is saying. Man is simply following others and not acting on his own. He prefers to follow others because he doesn't want to exercise the option of thinking. He simply allows somebody else to think and he follows them. So this is what he is doing, simply following others and not acting on his own based on his own judgment. So this is something which he has to do to transform himself to be called a man. Then she moves to observations on science. As we have discussed the other day, this book or this treatise, she has not arranged the topics in a derivative fashion. She went from one topic to another topic. And so she is moving now to science. She says science, she observes, is making rapid progress and discovering, adding a lot of new ideas, especially in subjects like chemistry, physics, organology, and anthropology. Chemistry, physics, organology is science of music, and anthropology, of course, we know something to begin with, or how the man came about and all that. So she says science has made rapid progress and discovering and adding new ideas in subjects like chemistry, physics, organology, and anthropology. It is expected man, especially scientists, will be free of prejudices. Ordinary man may not be free of prejudice, but she expects the scientists to be free of prejudice. Ordinary man may not be free of prejudice. She expects the scientists to be free of prejudice, but it is not happening in the real world, she says. Actually, scientists also is guided more by prejudices. A man who questioned, now she is moving to another field of religious dogmas. A man who questioned the religious dogmas, religious theories, and wanting to discuss that there is a falsification in the theory propounded, also which needs correction, is branded as a man who has gone against religion. So she says nobody would dare criticize religious dogmas. So religious dogmas, whosoever has questioned them, whosoever questioned the religious theories and wanting to discuss especially that there is a falsification in the dogma or theory. There is a mistake which is there in the theory. Suppose somebody wants to discuss that, and especially the falsification has to be corrected, the mistake has to be corrected. If somebody is willing to talk about it, that person is branded as a man who has gone against religion and a critic of what was considered as right. Who is considering it as right? The religious teachers or religious people who are propagating religion, they say it is right. But there is someone who is thinking that maybe there is some correction which is required. So these dogmas needs to be corrected. Some intelligent man is thinking in terms of that. But then he is not allowed to think. He is branded as a man who has gone against religion and a critic of what is considered as right. So what is right according to them is right for everybody. So they don't allow anybody to criticize. This is what happening in religion. Man should be allowed to question the dogmas. SPB says, H.P. Blavatsky is saying, man should be allowed to question the dogmas and postulates of science too. Man should be allowed to question the dogmas, religious dogmas, and postulates of science too. But the society is not looking at those who criticize kindly. People who criticize are not looked up to. They're in fact banished. So this is what she's saying. Actually, the person should be allowed to question the religious dogmas and postulates of science. Luckily, now, of late, science, if you prove something good, that is also accepted, that is given a PhD. And somebody finds out that what has been found out by an earlier scientist is wrong, even for that theory also, there is a PhD given. So perhaps this is not true now, but at the time when she wrote, she said religious dogmas could not be questioned, and also the postulates of science were also not questionable by any person. Sometimes they are punished. Especially people who have questioned the religious dogmas were punished. Not maybe people who questioned the postulates of science or principles of science, but those who have questioned the religion and the theories of religion were punished. And she hops onto her hobby horse. I would say hobby horse because she is more concerned about spiritualism. Wherever there is an opportunity, she goes back to the subject of spiritualism. When I ride my hobby horse, means I take it every time I like the subject, I get onto that. Even spiritualism, lot of unconventional, unorthodox spiritualists have questioned the ever-changing principles of spiritualism. Unorthodox spiritualists. There are orthodox spiritualists who go by the book or go by the past theory. There are also new people, unorthodox spiritualists, who have questioned the ever-changing principles of spiritualism. Protein is what she has written, Protean. That is something which is not fixed. It keeps on changing. The philosophies keep on changing. Spiritualists have questioned the ever-changing principles of spiritualism. They were not encouraged. People who were questioning this system were not encouraged to ask questions by the protagonists of orthodox spiritualism. So people who wanted to question why this is happening, why that is happening, were not encouraged by the protagonists, means the supporters of orthodox spiritualism or the people who brought about orthodox spiritualism, who feel these protagonists of orthodox spiritualism, they feel the theory and their beliefs cannot be breached or penetrated. They don't allow any penetration, means nobody should look beyond the screen. So they don't allow anybody to go behind the screen and find out what exactly is happening. So they feel, the orthodox spiritualists feel, that the theory and beliefs which they have cannot be breached. They cannot be breached at all. They have to be simply accepted. Nobody can penetrate the truths which they are trying to talk about. So this is how even the spiritualists behaved. The scientists behave the same way, the religious behave the same way, the spiritualists also behaved the same way. She gives an example. The spiritualists believe that their medium is a person to whom he is a weak person who has been selected as medium, and they invite the spirits to occupy that medium. So the spiritualists believe that mediums could contact the spirits of Shakespeare, Byron, Franklin, Napoleon, and his consort Josephine. This is the list she has provided in the book. She says spiritualists actually believe their mediums could contact, or somebody could help them contact, the spirits of Shakespeare, Byron, Franklin, Napoleon, and his consort Josephine. And whatever mediums gave as messages, they were purported to have been given by Shakespeare, Byron, Franklin, etc. So this is something which they believe is right. If somebody questioned how can Shakespeare come and give his version of it to a medium, they say, no, we don't allow this. Simply, if you want to participate in it. So this is how the spiritualists also behaved. And they believed that the mediums could actually contact the spirits of Shakespeare, Byron, Franklin, Napoleon, and his consort Josephine. Whatever mediums gave as messages were purported to be given by Shakespeare and Byron, etc. So they thought whatever, it could be a silly discussion or something, points which this medium must have put it out. She says about that somewhere below. But They thought all that which the medium is talking is coming from Shakespeare. All that the medium is talking is coming from Byron. All that statements which he is making is coming from somebody like Napoleon. So this is something which they believed. And the messages which were coming from persons like Shakespeare were appearing very trivial, were very trivial, means very silly, trivial, very small, silly, sometimes vulgar. The persons like Shakespeare cannot afford to talk in those trivial way, silly way, and vulgar fashion. But the messages given by the mediums were like that. So they say the messages given by mediums, saying that Shakespeare has given it, were appearing very trivial, silly, vulgar. Even then, persons were not coming forward to investigate and find the truth. Even then, persons were not coming forward to investigate and find the truth. So this is the fate of people who believe certain things without questioning the method of approach. So men, even now, she says, men, even now, judge others or a thing by the appearance of the surface. What is appearing on the surface is what people see, and no one wants to go to the depth of what is the truth. So if you scrap the surface, you will not get the truth. If you really dive deep and go into the depth, one may get at the truth. So this is what she is saying. Men even now judge by the surface. They only go by the surface, what is appearing on top. But no one wants to go to the depth to see what is truth. So no one wants to really find out what is truth, but they are going by what is appearing on top of the surface. HPB says we have to censure those who do not want to dive deeper to find the truth. Not that we have to simply say, okay, they're doing this, but actually we have to be tough with them. We have to censure them, people who don't actually dive deep to find the truth. HPB says we have to censure those people who do not want to dive deeper to find the truth. Without diving deep, whatever they find, they are popularizing them as truths. They are propaganda they're doing for those statements as truth. So she says, actually, these people need to be censured, means spoken tough with them so that they do not do this mistake. They have to dive deep and find the truth. HPB says, an example, pearls, cut diamonds will not be found loose on the ground. HPB says, pearls, cut diamonds will not be found loose on the ground. You don't find them on the ground. They are somewhere else, cut diamonds and pearls. The diamonds especially, they're somewhere deep down in the earth. Pearls are in ocean. So she says, HPB says, pearls, cut diamonds will not be found loose on the ground. When oyster is caught, opened by the diver, only then he can lay his hands on the pearls. So there is an effort required for him. He has to catch an oyster and then open the oyster, and then he will find pearls. Similarly is the case with a person who wants to find out where diamonds are. HPB therefore says, we need to investigate and then accept anything which is being circulated as truth. HPB therefore says, we need to investigate and then accept anything which is being circulated as truth. In fact, to the extent of saying, whatever I write, whatever I say, you don't accept, is what she says. You have to have your own method of finding out whether it is right, reasonable, etc. Don't accept because HPB said it. You definitely put it to the test for which it should stand, and then try to keep them as postulates of truth. So this is what she believed in. She says, HPB therefore says, we need to investigate and then accept anything which is being circulated as truth. So a lot of lies, a lot of half-truths are getting circulated as truths. A lot of lies and a lot of half-truths are getting circulated as lies. So we should be tough with those people who are actually doing false propaganda. So we should talk to them, we should talk them out of it, ask them to dive deep and find out the real truths. So she gave an example also of how we should find diamonds and pearls. HPB now quotes Professor John Fiske, Fiske, John. HPB quotes Professor John Fiske, who, while talking about matter and spirit, that means she has moved to a different subject. She is talking about matter, she is talking about spirit now. So she has finished talking about other topics like spiritualism and other things. Now she is moving to another area. She quotes Professor John Fiske, who, while talking about matter and spirit in his book Unseen World, he has written a book called Unseen World, said that the existence of spirit cannot be demonstrated to the senses. Senses means sense organs. Existence of spirit cannot be demonstrated to the senses. So senses may not be able to perceive what is the nature of spirit. Scientists also accept that spirit is not matter. Scientists also accept that spirit is not matter, and laws applicable, LAWS, Shasanamulu, laws LAWS applicable to matter are not applicable to spirit. The rules which are applicable to matter are not applicable to spirit. Like we can feel and see the matter, spirit, whatever may be its vastness, we cannot see the spirit. We cannot touch the spirit. So this is what she is talking about, spirit and matter. She says, John Fiske talked about it in his book called The Unseen World. And he said, the existence of spirit cannot be demonstrated to the senses, meaning sense organs. Scientists also accept that spirit is not matter. Lucky they have accepted matter is different, spirit is different. Scientists also accept that spirit is not matter. And the laws applicable to matter are not applicable to spirit. The matter functions differently, the matter behaves differently, the spirit behaves differently. So the laws applicable to these two natures of spirit and matter are also different. Like we can feel and see the matter. We can see the matter, we can also feel the matter because matter is tangible. So we can feel the matter, we can also see the matter. Spirit, whatever may be its vastness, whatever may be its size, whatever may be the size of the spirit being vast, we cannot see the spirit, we cannot touch the spirit. So this is what it is. It is something which has to be perceived, it cannot be touched. Now for a change, HVB, India, she has traveled to India. She is talking about fakirs and holy men of India. The reference to matter and spirit for the time being has ended there. She has not moved over to a topic which is of lighter interest. She has gone to India and other places, and she talks about fakirs. Fakirs are people who don't have a place to live in. The Muslim fakirs, they keep moving all over the place. So the fakirs and holy men of India, whom she met during her travels in India, Benares especially, she saw how holy men used to associate themselves with pitris. This is a term which is used. Pitris means forefathers who are not living, meaning that they are dead. She saw how holy men used to associate themselves with pitris, meaning forefathers who are not living but who are dead. And the holy men used to perform certain ceremonies to appease the pitris, to make them feel happy. So they used to do certain ceremonies. So this is what she talks about holy men, especially in Benares. I believe maybe she must have gone to the Ganges and seen whatever Pinda Pradhana, something like that was happening. Pinda Pradhana is something which we do in Hindu rites, where we believe that the essence of the Pinda is taken by the Pitris. So this is what she must have seen. So holy men used to perform certain ceremonies to appease the Pitris, she says. She has also seen Muslim religious priests. She has also seen Muslim religious priests shouting and dancing. Shouting as part of dance. They used to dance. Also used to make a lot of sounds, and they used to perform dances and used to be in an ecstatic state, maybe in trance. So they used to dance in such a way as if they're enjoying the dance, as if they're in a trance. Even if you touch them, perhaps they are not aware somebody has touched them. That sort of a trance they used to get into when they're dancing for performing their dance, or that is the way perhaps they believed how their ceremony should be done. So the Muslim religious priests, shouting and dancing, she observed them doing that. They used to perform dances and used to be in an ecstatic state of bliss, and maybe in trance. So they were also in trance. We call in Telugu Ponakam. Ponakam pattinattu vaadu ootu undevaadu ani. Maybe that's what perhaps she is hinting at. She has seen snake charmers, people. She has seen snake charmers of Benares and Damascus, another place near Turkey where she has gone. She has seen snake charmers of Benares and Damascus. All these men, HPB says, possessed certain secrets. All these men possessed certain secrets. She says she did not have time to study. She saw them, that's all. She did not have time to study. Without studying, examining, or looking at them superficially, scientists dismiss and say these people have nothing to really offer. Scientists who have visited them, who have seen them, without examining deeply or looking at them superficially, and they say they have nothing to offer. These scientists say all these fakirs, all these holy men, or the Muslim priests have nothing to offer. But HPB feels that they have certain secrets with them. So their acts are empty acts, is what scientists say. Empty, because it is only just way of killing time for them through performances. They really don't mean anything because they're performing that way. So this is what the scientists have dismissed them. It is just of entertainment value. Scientists have said this. It is just for entertainment value. When they say this, the scientists are missing an opportunity to study the powers of nature, says HPB. It is of an entertainment value, is what HPB is saying, that the scientists have talked about those people who are snake charmers or people who are performing dances, the Muslim priests and the Hindu priests who are doing certain ceremonies and all that. So scientists believed that they're all performances for killing time, and their only a value of performance is entertainment. So when they say that, scientists are missing an opportunity to study the powers of nature. So studying the powers of nature is one way of reaching to know what exactly is there in the spirit. So she says this is one way to study the powers of nature. If one is rejecting a phenomena, if one is rejecting the phenomena, they should do it after due examination. This is what she is saying. Somebody simply cannot brush away a particular subject, but if they are doing it, if they are especially sweeping off a phenomena, they should do it after due examination. Now, moving on to science. HPB is talking. HPB says, science, though there are skeptics, is not denying the immortality of the soul. This is what she is saying. The scientists believe that the soul is immortal. So they do believe that there is body which is getting perished. There is an imperishable thing which is perhaps called the soul, or whatever name they had. That is immortal, is what the scientists used to believe. But yes, there were some skeptics who didn't believe in this principle of immortality. So science, though there are skeptics, people who doubted, is not denying the immortality of the soul. Some people believed it. Some doubting Thomases said maybe it's not true. They accept that the soul is immortal. She's quoting Aristotle next. After saying this small thing about the soul being immortal by scientists, she is moving to the statements of Aristotle. He said, reason which is a product of brain and mind or intelligence, is subject to error. Reason, which is a product of brain or mind or intelligence, is subject to error. I guess when Aristotle talked about mind, he's talking about the lower mind and lower intelligence. Brain definitely is physical. Reason is subject to error. So if it is reason with brain or mind or intelligence, it is subject to error. Means there is possibility of error in that reasoning. So also opinion is also subject to error. Opinion is also subject to error. So these are the two statements. Reason is subject to error. So also opinion is also subject to error. We cannot say we are infallible. We cannot say we are infallible. This is HVB statement. Every one of us are capable of making mistakes, committing mistakes. We cannot say that we are incapable of making mistakes. We are not infallible. We are fallible. Means we definitely have got the propensity to commit mistakes. So we cannot say we are infallible. We are capable of doing right and also commit mistakes. We are also capable of doing right and also commit mistakes. So both are possibilities with us. There could be errors in reasoning. There could be errors in opinion making. This is what she said. Having said that, having quoted Aristotle in that, she says, we cannot say we are infallible. We are capable of doing right and also committing mistakes. So both possibilities are there in a human. It may happen that views of a learned professor, she's giving an example. It may happen that the views of a learned professor, very learned professor, may be proved wrong or erroneous. It may happen that views of a learned professor may be proved wrong or erroneous. A person who functioned with the common sense, his cook who is illiterate, his viewpoint may be error-free. She's giving an example of a professor who can make mistakes, who can be wrong, who can be error-prone. She says somebody who is not so learned as the professor, the cook of that professor, though he is illiterate, though he is a man of common sense only, his viewpoint may be error-free. So this is something which he is giving. See, it's not depending on how much of outside or formal education you have to be on the right side. It's not the question of knowledge which you have to prove that you are on the right side. The wisdom is a different thing. How you function with wisdom depends on your capabilities to think, organize your thinking, and present your thinking. So she says a cook may be right, his professor where he's working may be wrong. This is just an example she gave. HVP talks of a book, Tales of Impious Caliph. It's an Arabian sage authoring. So a Tales of Impious Caliph. Impious is someone who has not been very, very good at his religion. So Tales of an Impious Caliph. Caliph may be a person, priest or someone. This is the book written by an Arabian sage. This is the book title, talks about that book. But nothing of that book. She's talking about that particular sage was giving a wise discourse one day. That sage was giving a wise discourse one day. And he says, beware, O my son, of self-incense. Beware, O my son, of self-incense. It is most dangerous on account of agreeable intoxication. Profit by thy own wisdom, but respect the wisdom of thy fathers likewise. And remember, O my beloved, that the light of Allah's truth will often penetrate much easier an empty head than one that is crammed with learning. That many a silver ray is crowded out for want of space. This is the message given by the Arabian sage. He says in that wise discourse, beware, O my son, of self-incense. Don't over-imagine about yourself. Don't overestimate yourself. So anything about your own, you feel great about it. So don't overestimate yourself. It is most dangerous on account of agreeable intoxication. So it's something like intoxication, thinking that you are right, you are always right, you only say the right things. All these things have become factors for your intoxication. So she says, beware, O my son, of self-incense. It is most dangerous on account of agreeable intoxication. So we should not fall prey to it. Never have an overestimation of ourselves, and don't fall a prey to that self-incense, meaning overestimating oneself about achievements or capabilities and things like that. So she says that that's the warning which the Arabian sage gave. Arabian sage name was not given, but the book he wrote was given. Right. Profit by thy own wisdom. Profit by thy own wisdom. You have to definitely have your own wisdom, meaning you have to get at that wisdom by perhaps garnering the knowledge you have, turn it around and make it your own and call it wisdom. So profit by thy own wisdom. The wisdom should be your own. It's not borrowed, and somebody's wisdom is not your wisdom. So profit by thy own wisdom. Somebody says one is wise when he has become wise. Not that he has copied certain ideas from somebody and become wise. It's not possible. So he is wise because from inside he has become wise. From over a period of time, because of his method of going over and over again on a particular subject, he has become wise. So profit by thy own wisdom, but respect the wisdom of thy fathers likewise. So people who have lived before you, people who have fathered you, people, elders who are there before you, respect their wisdom too. Don't throw them away. Respect the wisdom of thy fathers likewise. And remember, O my beloved, that the light of Allah's truth, the light of Allah's truth will often penetrate much easier an empty head than one that is crammed with learning. So if Allah is the ultimate, and whatever He wants to convey to you, whatever that Allah has to say by way of message or whatever it is, it can only penetrate much easier. It will often penetrate much easier in an empty head. Only if the head is empty, completely empty, then if it is devoid of other unnecessary information which is crowded in it, if that is removed, when the head is empty, then the Allah's truth will often penetrate. So this is a beautiful statement for all of us to remember. If divine intelligence has to help with us, has to operate with us, we have to keep the head empty. We cannot keep all sorts of information which are necessary, important, unimportant, and still hope there is enough space for God to make His presence. It's not possible. Unless you make it clean, make it viable for His Spirit to operate, it will not operate. So he says Allah's truth will often penetrate much easier an empty head than one that is crammed with learning. Learning not converted into wisdom remains learning. I have learned. I'm only giving an example. I'm not saying anything. I have learned, say, for example, all the 700 slokas by heart of Gita. But I have not even transformed or translated anything into wisdom of even one shloka. What does it matter? How does it matter? I know verbatim I can reproduce what is there in Bhagavad Gita. So perhaps he's saying that Allah's truth will often penetrate much easier an empty head than one that is crammed with learning. Learning is of that useless nature if you simply gathered information and you have not converted that into wisdom. It is only learning. It is only information. And one more thing he says, that many a silver ray is crowded out for want of space. Silver ray meaning something which is divine, which is trying to come in. It's not able to come in and inspire you because there is no space inside. Your head is already crammed. So many a silver ray is crowded out for want of space. So silver rays are coming and touching perhaps our head and going away because there is no space. So we have to create enough space in us so that we can receive the messages of the divine. This is what that Arabian sage has told. She has mentioned that. This is also another important lesson for the humanity. How we should have our brain functioning or our head functioning. Not keep it full with unnecessary information or even information which is useful only to show off that I am learned, but the information which I have gathered, I should spend a lot of time on it, like the other class we mentioned, nididhyasa, and then make it into wisdom. So that's more important. Otherwise, a lot of silver rays will go because there is no space. Such is the case with us most of the time, she says. Such is the case with us most of the time. So if we are not careful enough, diligent enough, this is what is bound to happen to all of us. This is a very interesting piece of story which she has given about the Arabian sage. I thought she would give a story from that book, Impious Caliph, but then she spoke about the discourse the Arabian sage gave. Anyway, this is very interesting. My good friend was talking about a familiar story which all of us know, the Zen story, which the teacher keeps on pouring tea into the cup, and the disciple says, Sir, the cup is overflowing. Unless there is space in the cup, tea cannot be served. So he was perhaps conveying that message. This is a familiar story of Zen. So this is exactly what many people have conveyed it to us, that we need to keep our head free so that we can get the messages. The divine seeps in when there is enough space. HPB has conveyed this message very succinctly. She concentrated on the spiritualism quite a lot, and now she is talking about spiritualists once again. And she says the spiritualists were trying to establish something which was not based on good scientific foundation. Spiritualists were trying to establish something which was not based on good scientific foundation. We have come across the word necromancy even in the yesterday's class, in the morning class. That is talking with the dead. So spiritualists do this practice of talking with the dead. So she says they're not doing something which is established, which is based on good scientific foundation. This is a passing remark she made about the spiritualists. Then she moves to another subject. She says ancients were always special. Ancients means people who are living in the past, Sanatana, old, archives. So ancients were always special, especially the Chaldeans, who were astrologers. Chaldeans also were astrologers. They had a very ardent love for pursuit of knowledge. Chaldeans, who were also astrologers, they had a very deep desire and love for pursuit of knowledge. They tried to understand the secrets of nature, like the present scientists are also trying to investigate. The present scientists are trying to investigate the powers of nature or the laws of nature. So Chaldeans were also people who believed. They had that ardent love for pursuit of knowledge, for understanding what is nature conveying to human being. The achievements of old chemists, talking about ancient chemists, she's talking about the achievements of old chemists. She brings out with the help of a story. A cup made of glass, a cup which was made of glass, was brought to the courts of a king, Tiberius, Tiberius of Rome. A cup made of glass was brought to the court of King Tiberius, Tiberius of Rome. The glass cup was dashed on the marble. The glass cup was dashed on the marble. The cup did not break, but there was only a dent. That dent was removed with the help of a hammer. See what what sort of glass they made in the ancient. So, talking about the goodness of the ancient scientists, especially this glass is part of chemistry, I'm told. So, a cup made of glass was brought to the court of King Tiberius of Rome. The glass cup was dashed on the marble. The cup did not break, but there was only a dent. Dent normally we see now for a metallic vessel, but she is talking about a dent which formed for a glass cup. That dent was removed with the help of a hammer. Hammer is something, the beat of a hammer must be very strong. That hammer was used to remove the dent. The chemistry of ancient reached a point which we have never approached. She says, she quotes an author, Wendell Phillips. She says, the chemistry of ancient reached a point which we have never approached. That means during the her period, maybe 1877, around that period, maybe chemistry has not touched that particular stage of the ancients. Chemistry of ancient reached a point which we have never approached. If the story is not accepted, it is because we cannot reproduce that sort of glass. She says, if the story is not accepted, and if somebody says it is false, it is because we cannot reproduce or produce that sort of a glass. HPB, having visited Tibetan monasteries, HPB has gone number of times, 3 times at least, to Tibet. She has visited monasteries. She talks about one monastery, Samarkand, like Uttarakhand, it seems to be Samarkand. She says such cups and glassware were being used to this day by those monasteries. HPB, having visited Tibetan monasteries, Samarkand, says such cups which will not break and glassware are also being used to this day. So there is a method of doing or manufacturing that glass which perhaps the scientists know now, but during the time when HPB wrote this book, they were not knowing. Everything has emanated or is born out of virgin matter. Everything has emanated or is born out of virgin matter. First time used matter is virgin matter. And this matter, according to geologists, was actually a fluid. See this matter, for the first time when somebody has used it, it was a fluid. This is what geologists were saying. Everything has emanated or is born out of virgin matter, and this matter, according to geologists, Bhugarbha Shastragnalu, was actually a fluid. It is into this fluid they immersed common glass, kept it for several hours to make it malleable and unbreakable. Malleable is you can twist it into any form you like. Malleable and unbreakable. So this matter, virgin matter, the geologists say, actually was a fluid. Into this fluid, they immersed the common glass, kept it for several hours to make it malleable and unbreakable. This is how it was made. Maybe now they're making unbreakable glass, I guess. But during the time of 1877, maybe it was not there. HPB talks about a foreign correspondent of the Theosophical Society. HPB talks about a foreign correspondent of the Theosophical Society. He was a medical practitioner, actually, but studied occult science for more than 30 years out of interest. So here is a person who is a medical doctor, but studied occult science for more than 30 years. He had produced true oil of gold. He had produced true oil of gold. Other scientists have seen it. Other scientists of his time, they were scientists, whereas this man was a doctor. But he produced true oil of gold. Other scientists have seen it, but did not know how to make that true oil of gold. The scientists did not know how to reproduce that oil, true oil of gold. Any metal dipped in that oil turned into gold. Very lucky, She says this man was a Theosophical Society representative, foreign correspondent. And the story which she gives, or the fact which she gives, is even more interesting. He was a doctor, but then he was an occult scientist. So he produced, after living with the occult science for more than 30 years, a true oil of gold. And scientists have seen it, they examined it, but did not know how to make the true oil of gold. She says, any metal dipped in that oil turned it into gold. This is one of the secrets of alchemy. This is one of the secrets of alchemy. It's very interesting. Do we have time, Mamata, or can we go on? Mamata? Okay. There's no. The world, prapancham, the world moves in cycles. The world moves in cycles, says HPV. Physical sciences are more popular now than spiritual sciences. Physical sciences are more popular now than spiritual sciences. The new scientists will look at the old scientists' work as irrelevant. This is the curse. The old scientists' work was seen by the new scientists as irrelevant. What is light today may be darkness for tomorrow, she says. What is light today may be darkness for tomorrow. There is a cycle, like we have a cycle. Maybe sometime back, BCom was good, but then later on, engineering became good. Maybe sometime later, something else will become good. Like that, there is a science which is there where the world moves in cycles. About scientific method of progressing, she says physical sciences are more popular now than spiritual sciences. This, the oil of the true oil of gold, was an occult secret. So the spiritual sciences are also popular at one point of time. But the new scientists of today will look at the old scientists' work as irrelevant. She says, what is light today may be darkness tomorrow. Because people are relegating it, not considering it as good, it may be light today, but nobody will pay attention to it, so it becomes darkness. Another interesting piece of information, the coming of human races will be the reproduction of those who lived 100 centuries ago. This is a very interesting information she gives. Another interesting piece of information she says is the coming human races, the future coming races will be the reproduction of those who lived 100 centuries ago. So they will be the same as maybe in the qualities, maybe in the everything. It will be just like what they were 100 centuries ago. This is a statement which she has made. She must have definitely some proof for it, but she has only mentioned this sentence. Hermetists means people who believe in philosophy of Hermes are not spoken about kindly by many now. Hermetists means people who follow Hermes, Tehuti, are not spoken about kindly by many now. But everyone who is interested has those books. A lot of people still, though they say they are not interested in him, they still preserve his books. They lift the ideas from those books, ancient books, and give a color saying the ideas are their own. This is another pity. They copy the ideas from the Hermetic philosophy, from the ancient books, and give a color, maybe change a sentence there, change a sentence here, and saying the ideas are their own. Plagiarism is the word she has used. Plagiarism is the word she has used. You simply lift the ideas from some other book and say they are mine. So this is not something which is happening then, even now it's happening in a lot of fields. Plagiarism. Sometime in future, these Hermetists, people who believe in Hermes, will be truly recognized. Similarly, Paracelsus, another author, was a creator of chemical medicines. He was a creator of chemical medicines. No one gives him credit for what he has achieved so far. So many physicians, chemists, even homeopaths have taken advantage, but they will not acknowledge his work. See, this is the pity, isn't it? She talks about Paracelsus, Paracelsus, that is the name, was a creator of chemical medicines, No one gives him credit for what he has achieved. So many physicians, chemists, homeopaths have taken advantage, but they will not give credit to the inventor, that is Paracelsus. This is the problem. HPB is quoting another German author, Schopenhauer. Schopenhauer. He was a German philosopher. He says the universe is but the manifestation of the will, the divine will. The universe is but the manifestation of the divine will. Every force in nature, every force in nature is also an effect of will. So everything which has come about in the universe is because of the divine will or the divine plan. The manifestation is taking place because of the divine will. This is what Schopenhauer, Schopenha, Schopenhauer. That's the way it is pronounced. S is silent. So Schopenhauer doctrine. He was a German philosopher. He says the universe is but the manifestation of the will, the divine will. Every force in nature is also an effect of the will. Every force in nature. In nature, there is a power. That nature is also because of the effect of the will, the result of that divine will. Objectivity may be of different varieties and densities. What has come out of the manifestation, what is objective, what is being seen, what is being felt, may be of different varieties and densities. But the will was one. Divine will was one. Objectivity may be of different varieties and densities. Plato also stated everything visible was created or evolved out of this invisible and eternal will. Plato also says that everything visible was created or evolved out of this invisible and eternal will. Worlds, prapanchalu, all the entire worlds are based on geometrical forms. These Greek philosophers were also great mathematicians, Pythagoras, Plato, and all those. So he's talking about all the entire worlds are based on geometrical forms. And a geometrical form was the model used by the deity. That was the form, that was the geometry was used by the deity, means God or ultimate. Primal being, the first being, is an emanation of the demiurgic mind, DEMIURGIC mind, which has from eternity the idea as to how the world has to be created. Primal being is an emanation of the demiurgic mind, godly mind means, which has from eternity the idea as to how the world has to be created. So it has a will, it has a plan. So the demiurgic mind has a will, has a plan, so it is going on according to the plan. And it is always there, eternity, the idea as to how the world has to be created. Idea, within inverted commas, means the way it has to be produced, how the form has to be given. The idea is produced from himself, meaning, again, deity. Himself, H is capital. Idea is produced from himself. The laws of nature are the established relations of this idea. The laws of nature are the established relations of this idea. Idea is produced from himself. So the laws of nature are related to this idea. It means everything is divine. Idea has come out, means the plan has come out from him. And these natural laws also are part of that idea. The laws of nature are the established relations of this idea to the forms of manifestation. Forms within inverted commas, according to Schopenhauer, are time, space, and causality. This is a very profound statement. Forms, according to Schopenhauer, are time, space, and causality. Causality means root cause, space, and time. All these ideas are not new, opines HPB. So all these she has quoted from somewhere else, but then she says they are all we are familiar with. at least she is familiar with. She says time, space, and causality. Cause, C-A-U-S-E, cause means karana. These are the factors which are the reasons for all the forms to appear. All these ideas are not new. This idea is an ordinary idea. The idea above, which we have read in inverted commas, means the divine idea of the divine being. So here she says all these ideas are not new, opines HPB. There is another philosopher by name Philo, who perhaps was thought as someone who followed the philosophy of Plato, but he is not a follower of Plato. He says the invisible world was completed in his divine reason. He says the invisible world, the shape of the invisible world was there in his divine reason. He had the plan in his mind. That's what it means. According to the theogony of Mochus, M-O-C-H-U-S, theory or the religious philosophy of Mochus, ether first and then air. Ether first and then air. The two principles from which the intelligible God, the visible universe of matter, was born. This is what the Mochus says. M-O-C-H-U-S is the name of the person. He says, ether first, then air. The two principles from which the intelligible God, the visible universe of matter, was born. God and the universe were products of ether and then air, says M-O-C-H-U-S, Mochus. According to Orpheus, the singer, everything emanated from spiritual egg, which was impregnated with ether. Orpheus, the singer of the Greek origin, he says everything emanated from spiritual egg, which was impregnated with ether. So ether, because it entered the spiritual egg. Egg means a space, spiritual space. So because it entered the spirit, ether entered the spirit, then impregnated with ether, everything became emanated. Everything emanated from spiritual egg, which was impregnated with ether. Wind is seen as a spirit of God. Wind is seen as a spirit of God. In the Kathopanishad, she quotes, Purusha, the divine spirit, already stands before matter. Purusha, the divine spirit, already stands before matter. Means matter is there, divine spirit, who is Purusha, is standing before the matter. From the union of the two, the great soul of the world is born. When the matter and the spirit came together, the great soul of the world is born. Mahatma, which is the spirit of life, also called the universal soul, says HPB. This is according to the Katha Upanishad. Purusha, the divine spirit, already stands before matter. From the union, Katha Upanishad, you remember Nachiketa's story. So this is what it is. Purusha, the divine spirit, already stands before matter. From the union of the two coming together, the matter and spirit coming together, the great soul of the world is born. Mahatma, which is the spirit of life, also called the universal soul. According to Plato, cosmos is the sun, S-O-N. Cosmos is the sun. Father is divine thought. Mother is matter. This is what Plato believed in. See, she has compiled all these postulates of various authors, various thinkers, so that we should be familiar with all that. According to Plato, the cosmos is the sun. Father is divine thought. Mother is matter. Another author, Van Helmont, the will, he says, is the first of all powers. Will, he says, Van Helmont, is the first of all powers. From that will or thought will, or through will, from that will or through will of the Creator, through the will of the Creator, all things were made and put in motion. I'll read this again because I made a mistake. The will, says Van Helmont, is the first of all powers. Ichhasakti anamata, will. Will, says Van Helmont, He is the first of all powers. From that will, or through that will of the Creator, all things were made and put in motion. Determined divine imagination is the beginning of all magical operation. Determined divine imagination is the beginning of all magical operation. So that's the beginning, the divine imagination, because he thought how anything and everything should look like. So the way he thought, the forms appeared. So he says determined, because he already determined how the form should look like. Divine imagination is the beginning of all magical operations. HPP records Pythagoras brought his doctrines from the eastern sanctuaries, from the east. From the east sanctuaries means where there is granaries of wisdom. He has taken from there. It was also Plato who compiled them into intelligible order. Pythagoras took it from here because even in the previous chapter we read about how close he was to Brihaspati, Sumanta, and so many other sages. So Pythagoras took all his doctrines from the eastern sanctuaries, but it was Plato who compiled them in an intelligible order. So there are a lot of numbers used by Pythagoras, which numbers also this gentleman Pythagoras, Pythagoras used a lot of numbers. Pythagoras relied on Eastern philosophy, and Plato compiled them, explained them in an intelligible order. That's what he says. HPP again goes back to a concept in spiritualism. She talks about an interesting aspect of it. She says, a phenomena in spiritualism. If in a seance room there are persons who are doubting the efficacy of the system or opposing the practice of the spirits operating through a medium, then the medium gets paralyzed. This is the statement she is making. HPP talks about a phenomena in spiritualism. If in a seance room there are persons who are doubting this or opposing the practice of the spirits operating through a medium, then the medium gets paralyzed. The medium will not be able to deliver what everyone is expecting from the medium. So this is something which is, I think we discussed in some other class, the same thing. In a seance room, there are persons who are doubting this, the possibility of some dead spirit coming and occupying the medium. So that process is not being accepted by people who are sitting there. A couple of them, or how many she has not said, but somebody is doubting their practice. So when that practice is doubted, the spirits operating through medium is something which they don't believe, then the medium, the person who has been chosen as the medium, gets paralyzed, means he will not be able to operate as a medium. The medium will not be able to deliver what everyone is expecting from the medium. So seance rooms can work well only if all the people living in the room say, yes, the spirit will come. Yes, the spirit will come. If they are so positive about that spirit coming, then only it will move on. It will happen. But if somebody is there who thinks, no, this may not be true, it may not happen, then the medium gets stuck. He will not be able to operate. This is a statement she made. I don't know from where she goes from one place to another place. She picks up spiritualism whenever it's suiting her. Now HPB is talking about another subject, which is force and atoms. Force and atoms. She's touching on these 2 points. She says, every exertion of will means divine will, results in force. Every exertion of will results in force. Manifestation of force will result in unconscious rushing of atoms into concrete images already subjectively created. See how it's happening. Every exertion of will, divine will, results in force. So when force is coming out of the divine will, because he is putting pressure there, force is coming out. manifestation of force will result in, because the force has manifested, it will result in unconscious rushing of atoms. The atoms which are lying without much of activity, they're rushing to a particular place into concrete images already subjectively created by the will. The will is already created certain forms. Subjectively means it is all in the mind of the creator. The forms have already been created there. So these atoms go and occupy those places. Exertion of divine will results in force. Once force is manifested, it will result in unconscious rushing of atoms into concrete images already subjectively created by the will. Subjectively means in the mind. The creation of the form is happening in the mind. Objective means the form which we can touch. Subjectively, the forms are made and the atoms go and fill that place. The Kabbalists say, this is another old Egyptian or Jew oriented people. Jews were called Kabbalists. Kabbalists say there were atoms and vacuum. They have slightly different theory. He says there were atoms and vacuum. These were the first principles according to Kabbalists. Vacuum is the latent force of the deity. శూన్యత అనమాట వాక్యూమ్ అంటే. మనం కూడా శూన్యత గురించి మాట్లాడతాం కదా. Vacuum is the latent force of deity. Deity means the ultimate, God. Latent force during manifestation transforms as will. Latent force during manifestation becomes and is will. When will enters atoms, it becomes matter. This is how Kabbalists are saying. They say atoms and vacuum are the first principles. Vacuum is latent force of the deity. Latent force means force which is innate, which is there as part of the base. Latent force during manifestation becomes and is will. When will enters atoms, when Ichha Shakti enters into atoms, it becomes matter. So how matter is born? Because the will is entering the matter which till that time was not active. When the will entered along with the atoms, it becomes matter. I'll read this again. The Kabbalists say there were atoms and vacuum. These were the first principles. Vacuum is latent force or deity. Latent force is vacuum. So latent force during manifestation, that is vacuum, during manifestation becomes and transforms into will. When will enters atoms, when this force enters atoms, it becomes matter. Visible effects of matter are nothing but effects of a force. This is another scientist's statement. Visible effects of matter are nothing but effects of a force. Because there is a force acting behind, and whatever is happening visibly, changes are happening in the matter, it's all because of the force. So Hartman says visible effects of matter are nothing but effects of a force. So this is what she talks about, atoms and force. Force is one form of energy. Atoms are part of the matter, are the most vital parts of the matter. Then she says the male essence was the wisdom or the spirit. The male essence was the wisdom or the spirit, while the primitive matter was female. Primitive matter was also called chaos. CHAOS. Chaos normally now means confusion, right? So she says the male essence was the wisdom or the spirit, while the primitive matter was female. Primitive matter was also called chaos. It was a formless matter. The primitive matter was a formless matter that was existing before the orderly universe emerged. The primitive matter was a formless matter that was existing before the orderly universe emerged. Ordinary meaning of chaos is confused state. In the beginning, the primitive matter was disorderly mass. Into that mass, the great breath entered, and that brought about order. So this is the explanation. The male essence was the wisdom of the spirit, while the primitive matter was female. So one is the male, the other one is the female. And then the primitive matter also called chaos, C-H-A-O-S. It was formless matter that was existing before the orderly universe emerged. So this primitive matter was not having any form, it was just existing before the orderly universe emerged. Ordinary meaning of chaos is confused state. In the beginning, it was disorderly mass. Into that mass, the great breath entered, and that brought out order. So the atoms coming into its proper place, everything filling into that form, all that took place once the great breath entered. The breathing, the great breath, this is also a factor which is explained in the secret doctrine, the great breath. So the great breath entered, and that brought out order. So this is about force, matter, and how the matter got organized into forms, etc. Now, she's talking about another topic. She says, intuition existed in man before reason. This is very interesting. We think reason is something with which we are born. She says, intuition existed in man before reason. Before reason actually started developing in man. Intuition was already there. Intuition existed in man before reason started developing in man. So I was thinking before I read this sentence that reason is there, and for intuition we have to depend on our higher manas and the Buddhic concept, Buddhic world. That's what I was thinking. But she says intuition existed in man before reason started developing in man. So intelligence is a subsequent thing, is what she is saying. Intuition was the beginning. Now reason has upper hand. We look for reason in everything. Presently, we see reason has the upper hand. We look for reason in everything. So we look for reasonable explanation, reason in everything. So that's what we say. Reason should be there for us to accept. But she says intuition existed in man before reason actually started developing in man. This is something which is baffling me right now, even now. We look for reason in everything. We have to struggle to get in touch with intuition. Right at present, we have to really work very hard to get in touch with the Buddhic plane where intuition rules. So we don't get there so easily. But according to HPB, intuition was there to begin with. Where did we lose it? We are caught up in matter. We are not able to contact or be in touch with the spirit. Yes, that must be the way in which we lost intuition. We are caught up in matter. We are not able to contact or be in touch with the spirit. Because we are so matter-oriented these days, we have lost the ability to touch intuition. We have lost also touch with the spirit. We are supposed to call the boundless, endless entity possessing that invisible will as God Almighty. I don't know why supposed to call. We are supposed to call the boundless, endless entity. Endless, Adi Madhyantarmulu Leni Jivi. Entity ante one living being. Boundless, no limits. There are no boundaries for it. So we are calling that entity, boundless, endless entity, possessing that invisible will. We can't see that will, the divine will which is there in that deity, we are not able to see. We call that principle as God Almighty. We have ended up with man-made forms. We have ended up with man-made forms and giving them godly status. Oh. We have ended up with man-made forms and giving them godly status. What is God? She is explaining. She is saying it is the boundless, endless entity possessing the invisible will. That is God Almighty. But what we have done now, we have ended up by man making forms and giving those forms godly status. So this is not God. Whatever man has created is not God. Whatever is the ultimate that has created by itself with the qualities of boundlessness, endless entity, and possessing invisible will, only that is God. That is God Almighty. So the rest of the things which we have created are only godly forms or godly status we have given them. She quotes Plato now. Will was called as divine idea. Will, which you have talked about so far, wherever will was mentioned, it means divine will. She quotes Plato, will was called as divine idea. From this divine idea, everything visible and invisible came about into existence. Plato said this. Plato borrowed everything from Eastern sages. That's what she has given in the past. So it matches with what the Eastern wisdom talks about. She says, Plato said this, will was called as divine idea. From this divine idea, everything visible and invisible came about into existence. What we can see, what we don't see, also came out thanks to this divine will. For example, we don't see the astral plane, we don't see the lower mental plane. All these things which we are not able to see with our naked eye are also things which have been made by the divine will. So the divine will, which is also called the divine idea, everything visible and invisible came about into existence. Atoms found in disorderly matter, chaos was directed by the force will, force dash will. Atoms found in disorderly matter, chaos was directed by the force will to form many objective forms into beings and into man. So a lot of living beings have come about, and man also has come about at later stage. These are all products of atoms found in disorderly matter. Chaos was directed by the force will to form objective forms into beings, into man. The same force was force will, force dash will, force hyphen will. The same force dash will was responsible for the universe emanating, that we call as macrocosm. The same force will was responsible for the universe emanating. The same force will gave all the objective forms into beings and that of man, is what she said in the beginning. Now she says the same force will was responsible for the universe emanating, that we call as macrocosm. A microcosm, a miniature form of the universe, is man. So whatever is there in the universe is also there in the microcosm, which is man. So we call the macrocosm as universe, microcosm is man. So she says, the force will was responsible for the universe emanating, that we call as macrocosm, is come out of that particular force will. The plan, the divine plan, is there in the great spirit. The plan, the divine plan is there in the great spirit. The divine geometer. Geometrician's law, geometrician and underneath this, but this is this word she has used, Geometer. The plan, divine plan is there in the great spirit. Chaitanyanlo, divine plan undi ani. A Maha Chaitanyanlo, ఈ plan undi ani. So she says, the divine geometer, divine geometrician, as he is called, the great architect. He is also called the great architect because he has all the forms in his mind or in his spirit, and then he transforms them into forms. An architect has a plan in his brain. She's talking about an ordinary architect. An architect has a plan in his brain about the way, about the structure he wants to build. It is abstract to begin with. When all the atoms have been sent in like workers, moved them from one place to another to form orderly matter, then a structure has come about. So this is what she is comparing. The plan, divine plan, is there in the great spirit, the divine geometer. He is called the great architect. He is also called the grand geometrician, great geometrician, not grand, divine geometrician, sorry. divine geometrician is also called the great architect. But normally, what does an architect do? She says an architect has a plan in his brain. More than brain, I think he has it in the mind. He has it in the mind. He uses the mind to conceive. So he has it in the mind, of course, written as brain here. An architect has a plan in his brain about the structure he wants to build. It is abstract to begin with. It is not having concrete shape. It is abstract. When all the atoms have been sent in like workers, when all the atoms have been sent in like workers, workers are very busy when once they start working on a building. So like all the atoms have been sent in like workers, the workers moved from one place to another to form an orderly matter, and a structure was built up. So this is how an ordinary physical structure is made, because it is there in the mind of a architect, and then everything else comes in. The atoms are sent in like atoms, because it is abstract structure there, and he plans so many things. So atoms are sent in like workers, he says, moved from one place to another to form orderly matter, which is the structure proper. Force will, or the universal will, she calls it now by a different name. Force will or the universal will acted on matter to create macrocosm. Force will or the universal will acted on matter to create macrocosm. So it is the universal will which has created the macrocosm. It is the same universal will which also made so many forms in this universe, including the form of a man. So it is the universal will which is operating. It has got a divine plan. The divine plan is something which is visible in stages. Now, she's saying something like God, man also can create certain things in a limited way. Like God, man also creates certain things in a limited way. He can visualize a concept and bring out that into poetry. Visualizing is happening in the mind. So he can visualize a concept and bring out that into poetry or as a piece of drama. He can visualize a palace as an architect and help to build a palace. He has visualized in air a sculpture. The rest of things visualized in the mind, but here especially she says a sculptor has visualized in air a sculpture. He is actually able to chisel a statue from the form he has in his mind. Of course, here she has used the term air. Maybe why she has used air, mind is made of mind, the product of mind is made with air. Vayu is the main thing. So perhaps she has used it like that. I'm not able to guess. He has visualized in air a sculpture. He is actually able to chisel it into a statue. So the sculptor who has got that in his mind or in his air is able to chisel that into a statue. Visualization or seeing in air is subjective. Visualization or seeing in air is subjective. His will is helping him to see all forms. His will, capital His will is helping him to see and create all forms. So this is the extract from the chapter 2. So many varied subjects she has chosen, and we have a conglomeration of ideas, beginning with what man should look like or what man should be working at, and moving to creation, how creation takes place, how force will, which is called also universal will, creates all forms, also how universal will creates the universe. Universe is called macrocosm, man is called microcosm.